Today's daf is daf Ayin Tes, and we're talking about the Shita of Rabbi Chanina of Shosek Almanas L'Mekat, where his shtika was not for the intention of being making the neder, but rather he was intending to be made for the neder. And according to Rabbi Chanina, we give him time after Yom Shomo, even 10 days later, he could be made for the neder. Now, before we go on to ask Akasha on Rabbi Chanina, let's just mention here on the top of my Testament Aleph that Kiyim Eino Yochel Lahafer, that when the Brisa gives us the dinim of Hakom and Afara, and it mentions that there's a certain equation between the two, it says the following, that once he was Mekayim the neder, he can't be made for the neder. In other words, when the Torah says Isha Yekimenu, once he's Mekayim, that's it, it's Mekuyim, it doesn't lend itself to Afara. And in the reverse, Hefer, Eino Yochel L'Kayim, he cannot be Mekayim the neder. And the reason for that, as we mentioned in the past, the name of Chaim, is because once he's made for the neder is bottled, it doesn't exist anymore. There's no possibility of being Mekayim a neder that doesn't exist. And the truth is that this doesn't really mention a chumrah or a kula and a kavah vis-a-vis afara or the other way around, but rather they're both equal. And now we go on to the kasha of Rav Tani. It says here in the Brisa that ashsika mekayemes, my love, doesn't it mean b'shosek amanas l'mekai? And this is against Rabbi Chanina, because it seems that here he cannot be made for the neder because shtika is mekayemes. And if we assume that shtika mekayemes is referring to a case of shosek almanas l'mekat, then according to Rabbi Chanina, that shtika almanas l'mekat is not mekayem the neder. He should be able to be made for it afterwards. So the Gemara rejects it low. The case of the Brisa of shtika mekayemes is the shosek almanas l'kayem. He has a full intention to be Mekayim the neder, not the case of Rabbi Chanina where his intention was to be made for the neder. So Gemara asks, Hainu, Kiyem Belivo, the Bryce already mentioned Kiyem Belivo, Kayam. It's a valid Kiyum neder. So why do you have to tell me that Shika Mekayemes? El, the Gemara answers that what does the Bryce have in mind when it says Shika Mekayemes? That's B'shosek Stam. He didn't have any kavanah, not this way or not that way, not for the sake of hakama, nor for the sake of hafara. It wasn't almanas l'kayim and neder, and it wasn't almanas lahafer and neder l'meika. And that case is a case where, let's say, he hears about the neder and he's not responding. He's thinking it over. He's contemplating. He's deciding what his response should be. The Gemara now takes a break from this sugya, this nidon that we're talking about of shika almanas l'mekat, to explain the reisha of this brayso. Gemara asks the following: Ashkechan chomer b'hakim mi behefer. We found that there's a chumrah in hakama vis-a-vis hefer, that hakama is chal even b'lev, whereas hafara requires a verbal pronouncement. He's got to say orally mufarlach. But chomer v'bohakim, you know, what is the chumrah of hafara of hakam? Of Rav Yochanan, shenishalav al hakama ve'ein nishalav al hafara. And Rav Yochanan's mechadish here something very new, something sensational, that you can be shoel on hakama. So that means if the father or the Baal was Mekayim the neder, either one of them can be shoel on the hakama. They can go to a chacham and be oker the hakama, and afterwards they can be made for the neder. But there's no parallel halacha in afara. Ein nishal al afara. They cannot be shoel on afara and to regenerate the neder to back what it was before the hafara. The hafara completely wipes off the neder. Hakama is like a neder itself, and therefore, says the Ran, it's Makayim the Neder, and therefore lends itself to Hatoras Neder, which here in this case would be Hatoras Hakam. Now, Rabbeinu Evram bin Ahar is quoted here, and also in the Iri, who quotes Rashi, that this din is referring to a Nara Murasa, which means that the Baal and the Av together with Makayim the Neder, well, excuse me, the Baal or the Av, one of the two, and the other one takes it to a Chacham to be Matir the Neder. And we might think that since there was a Hakam on the part of one of the two, the Av or the Baal, you cannot have She'el on such a Neder, because the Neder has changed through the Hakam. But since the halacha of She'ela, Hataras Chacham, is Matir the Neder, is Mevela, even the Kirma Neder is bought. But Rabbeinu Avram bin Ahar adds that Zeh Pirush Mevulbal Ma'od. He doesn't seem to sign on to this parish and accept it, but rather that the one who was Makayim the Neder, he himself was shoel on his Zakam. Now, Ein Nishalom al Hahefer. And the Ran says, Mishum Sha'afara Eino Ke'ein Gufa Neder. However, we can add to that in the case of Hakam, it's Mechazik the Neder, and he can remove that chizuk of the Neder through She'ela, and to bring the Neder back to its original situation before the Hakam. And therefore, Afara would be after it. But Afara is Mevatel the Neder, removes the Neder. And immediately the Neder is gone. Once the Batal Neder is accomplished, then how could you possibly bring it back through a She'ela when it doesn't exist in the world anymore? But once again, to quote Rabbeinu Avram ben Ahar in the name of Rashi, the Safek is in an Arura, so one of the two, the Av of the Baal will Mefer the Neder, and the other one goes to the Chacham to be Matir the Neder. And She'ela doesn't work because you cannot be Matir Neder, which was Nitar Chetzio, Ba'afara, V'chetzio Ba'ashola. You cannot integrate a Hashola with a Hafar, half and half. Moser Rav Kahana. Kahana raised an objection to Rav Chia from a Brisa. The Brisa darshans the following pasuk in the Parsha Nedarim Matis. Vim hachrei shachrish lo isha. And the Brisa says that this is the case of Shosek Amanas L'Meika Takosma. This is explicit against Rabbi Chanina, because in this very case, we're talking about Rabbi Chanina's scenario of make it al Manasla, Shosek Amanas L'Meika, and the Torah is saying that the neder is Mekuyom. And the Brisa asks, so maybe we're talking about a case where Shtika was because he intended to be Mekayim. Omer, since there's an extra part, a superfluous part of this pasuk, in which the pasuk seems to repeat itself, Ki hechrish lo yom shamo. So let's read the whole pasuk. It starts by saying hechrish yakrish lo isha yom el yom. The hekim is called Nedarim. And then it says, Hekim Osam Ki Hechrish Lo Yom Shamo. It's literally a repetition of what appeared at the beginning of the pasuk. So what's the ribui here? Why did the Torah repeat itself? And that's to tell you that we're talking about a case of, number one, the Shosek Almanas L'Kayim, Kosim Medaber, Mani Mekayim, why do I have the extra pasuk? Yachrish Lo Isha. The Shosek Almanas L'Mekim, Kosim Medaber. So there's a special ribui here, that even if his hakama was done, or shall we say his shtika was done, not for the intention of being makayim the neder, but for the intention of being made for the neder, nevertheless, the neders were kuyam. So you see explicitly in the Brisa, against Rabbi Chanina holds shtika amanas l'meked is not makayim the neder, And the Gemara it leaves it as Tufta. We'll see soon that the Gemara still is going to attack Rabbi Hanina, despite the fact that we've already achieved our goal with this price of Tufta. Now the Gemara wonders about the Raya of the Bryce. So there are actually three different categories of Shtika. There's Shtika Almanas L'Kayim, there's Shtika Stam, he's still contemplating, and there's Shosik Almanas L'Mekit. So the Gemara asks the following question: the Lokim, if you have an extra pasuk and a ribui because of the superfluous repetition of the pasuk, why don't we assume it's coming to be Marba Shosik Almanas L'Kayim, V'Hov Shosik Stam? That one kiyum is because his shtika was for the goal and his ultimate purpose was to be a kind of neder. And the other ribui in the pasuk is for shosek stam. That even though he didn't have a definite positive intention to be a kind of neder, nevertheless, with Yom Shamo at the end of the day, since he was shosek, the neder is mekuyah. And the Gemara answers Kroy Yiseri. So there are actually three psukim. Number one is Hachreish Achreish, and that's two. So that's referring to his two shtikos. And then it says, as we saw the repetition at the redundant repetition at the end of the pasuk, Hachreish La. Right? Hachreish La. So now we have three psukim. So if we have three psukim, one is for Shosik Amanas L'Kayim, one is for Shosik Stam, and one is for Shosik Amanas L'Mekit. Nasiv Rava also wants to object and reject Rabbi Hanina based on the Mishnah back on Daf Ayin Vav. Nudja, if on Shabbos itself, on the day of Shabbos, she took another Im Chashecha right before the end of Shabbos, Meifrila ad Shalo Chosh. We're going to allow him to be made for the neder on Shabbos before Laila, and we're not going to impose an Isur Chacham of how far is the Dor Shabbos because he can't wait till tomorrow. And that reflects the Shita of the Rabbanon that Yom Shamo terminates with Laila. We don't give him 24 hours. Shimlo Hefer V'chashcha Eni Yochel Lahafer. In other words, there's a pressing need because he doesn't have an option of being Mefer on Motzi Shabbos, and he can only be Mefer now on Shabbos. So we'll allow him, we'll overlook the inhibition of the Rabbanan to allow how far on Shabbos. For the sake of this pressing need, it's urgent that it be made for the neder. There's no opportunity and no possibility to be made for the neder after Shabbos. So the Gemara asks my mind. This is Rava's objection to Rabbi Hanina. We could still tell him, let's prohibit Afara on Shabbos. There's no pressing need. We have another way around, and we can circumvent this problem by what? By lehevi kishosek almanas lemaking. We're going to say that since he's only being shosek because the Rabbanan told him not to be made for the neder on Shabbos, but rather to wait to be made for. But you're telling me it's Yom Shamo is past, he won't be able to be made for. The answer is according to Rabbi Hanina, I have a great option for him. Since his shtika on Shabbos is not because he wants to be mekayim neder. He has no interest in being mekayim neder. He's only being shosek because of the Isur Shabbos. And once again, the Gemara says, we have an objection to Rabbi Hanina from the Mishnah, and therefore we don't have an answer to that question. Masiv Rabbi Ashi, another kasha from a Mishnah later on in Masechet Nedarim, raised by Rav Ashi in objection to Rabbi Hanina. If the Baal says, I'm aware of the fact that she took a neder. Nobody taught me that on the day that I hear the neder, I have the opportunity to be made for the neder. In my mind, I thought that once she took the neder, I heard about the neder, it's a din neder go, and there's no possibility of afara. Yafet. He can be made for the neder on that day that he finds out about afara. So the Yom Shamo now, vis-a-vis afara, is pushed off until he finds out that he can be made for the neder. As long as he doesn't know about the power, the authority that the Torah invested in being made for the neder, it's not called Yom Shamo. The Yom Shamo means when he knows there was afara, an option of afara, He knows he could have exercised that right to be made for the neder, and yet he was shosek. But what happens, and here's a machlokas tanai, Yodea ani sheyesh mafir, I know that I have the power to be made for the neder. Al eni yodea shezeh neder. There are only certain nedarim that he can be made for. For example, he can be made for only nedarim sheyesh b'hem inui nefesh, certainly in the case of the Baal. I didn't realize that this particular neder fits into that category of nedarim that lends itself to hafara. I didn't know it was a neder shubar hafara. But Nero Melo Yofer, Ramor says he lost the Yom Shomo. He knew about A, the neder. He knew B, about the power of hafara. He was missing a little bit of a detail about this particular neder and how to categorize it. He was shosek the Yom Shomo. And even though his intention was to be made for the neder, the Sikas Chal, this is against Rabbi Chanina. Chachamim Omrim Yofer, Chachamim say, look, he didn't know that this neder lends itself to hafara, that it was a neder by hafara. That's not considered Yom Shomo. Yom Shomo means that he's absolutely aware, 100% aware of the fact that the neder was given to him for two possibilities, either to make him the neder or to be made for the neder. If he knew about those possibilities, then we say that his shtika indicates that he's not going to exercise his right to be made for the neder, but rather he's being mekayim the neder. Yofer, say Chachamim, if he's not aware of the fact that this particular neder lends itself to hafara, then it's not called Yom Shomo. Yom Shomo means that he knows in his mind he has two options. But here, he's not aware of the option of hafara. Not like this is an extension of the previous case where he's not even aware of the power that he has to be made for. He knows he can be made for, but he doesn't realize that this neder lends itself to hafara. He's there for Yofer. From the day that he finds out that he has authority over this neder to be mefer, from that day becomes Yom Shomo. So now Rav Ashi asks his kasha and he raises objection to Rabbi Chanina. If according to Rabbi Chanina, when the Av or the Baal is shosek because not that he wants to be mekayim the neder, but because Adarabi would like to be made for the neder, that's not considered shtika, and that's not a kiyum neder. Is Vamai now according to Rabbi Meir? I don't understand. Why does Rabbi Meir say he cannot be made for the neder after Yom Shomo? Lehevi kishosek amanas lemeika. Presumably, even Rabbi Meir accepts the basic principle of Rabbi Chanina that if his shtika was not for the purpose of approving of the neder, but rather he disapproves of the neder, that's not considered shtika b'Yom Shomo, and he can be made for the neder. So why would Rav Meir say that if he didn't realize that he has the power of hafara and he was shosei, that's considered a kiyum on the neder because of shtika b'Yom Shomo? Hadron tivta, hadron alecha nara amurasa. And now Mirz Hashem will begin the 11th perek, which is the Elu Nedarim.